177-year-old sourdough starter from the Oregon Trail. So I'm going to feed it and tell you just a little bit about how it came to be. I actually got this sourdough starter from a website called carlsfriends.net. And you don't have to pay to get this starter. You can actually just send them a self-addressed stamped envelope, and then they will send you your very own Oregon Trail starter. Carl passed away in the year 2000. He was born in the early 1900s. I can't remember the exact date right now, and I don't have the website in front of me, so I apologize. But he did have this very strong starter, and he would share it with anyone who asked throughout his lifetime. There are now a group of volunteers who maintain the starter, dehydrate it, and then ship it out to anyone who requests it. And this is their way of carrying on Carl's legacy. Now, I'm definitely not the first person to have Carl's starter, and I am definitely not going to be the last. I just am sharing my story of how I fell into baking. I am a beginner baker. I just started baking at the beginning of this year in an attempt to try to make better and healthier food choices for me and my family. I bet you're asking yourself, if this starter came from 1847 and Carl wasn't born until the early 1900s, how can it actually be 177 years old? Well, Carl's family moved to Oregon on the Oregon Trail during the 1800s. There was a lot of immigrants who traveled across the country. Only about 1 in 10 of them are estimated to have actually survived the trip, so it was kind of intense. Sourdough starter was very important to the settlers. It was a way for them to feed their families, and they would cuddle their starter at night in order to keep it warm. Things like that. You know, we keep it in our oven with the light on because we are very lucky to have modern technology available to us in order to maintain our starters. You know, they did not weigh it out like we do. They did everything just by eyeballing it. And, you know, it's just really, it's incredible to read about the history of sourdough and how it came to be. But this is just how this starter came to be. So again, Carl's family traveled on the Oregon Trail and they settled somewhere in Oregon. Carl himself was born in Oregon. Now, because they had this amazing starter, they did pass it down from generation to generation, and Carl would actually share the starter with anyone who asked, which is why there are a lot of people out there who have Carl's starter. You can still ask for Carl's starter. As I said before, you just have to send a self-addressed stamped envelope. There is a link in my bio to the website where you can request it. Now, like I've said before in several videos, and I will say again and again and again, is that they are very overwhelmed with requests for the starter. So if you do request the starter, please make sure that you are patient. I did email them about becoming a volunteer, and there are certain requirements in order to become a sourdough keeper. One of them is that it can be your only starter. Right now I have 3 starters in my home, so I would have to get rid of the other 2 and probably start Carl all over again from one of their starters before I could be a volunteer. I also have to maintain Carl for 1 year before I could be a sourdough volunteer, which is probably a really good idea because I'm still just a beginner baker. I mean, like I said, I just started at the beginning of this year. This story is definitely not over. There's definitely a lot more to the story of the 1847 Oregon Trail sourdough starter. But that's all I could fit into this video for now. Please make sure you do follow along if you want to see more of my baking adventures and hear a little bit more of history tidbits, little history snacks, if you will, as I go on this adventure. Happy baking.